Welcome to the Authentic as Fuck podcast. My name is Sun. I'm a storyteller and marketer. And in this podcast, I help members of our community with storytelling, branding, marketing, and entrepreneurship. And today we have Tabitha, who is actually Night Owl Nation's community director. So Tabitha, welcome.
Thanks so much,
Why don't you
Sun.
introduce yourself? Yeah, what you do and where you're from.
Yeah, I'm Tabitha. I'm originally from Maryland in the United States. I lived in Brazil for 12 years, where I started teaching English and opened my own school and helped a lot of people. And then we got online because of the pandemic. And now I'm back in the US. And I'd like to have some help today on that transition.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome
Yeah.
to America.
Yeah, it was 12 years there.
I know, that's crazy.
in the US.
You're
It's
basically
crazy.
Brazilian.
Yes. Yeah, I feel Brazilian.
So wait, so your kids were born in Brazil?
Yeah.
So are they not Brazilian nationals?
Yeah, dual
Technically?
citizens. Yeah, they were
Okay,
born there,
awesome.
and they also have American citizenship.
Oh, nice. Okay, so what are your questions?
Okay, so the first question I had was I wanted to run through the program that I'm creating, and you always say start messy.
Mhm.
And I had a few questions on price increases, and I also had some questions on target, like the audience that I want to target, because I think I want to change a bit
Okay.
because of my new location. Okay, so the idea of the program that I have is first people can book one-to-one sessions with me. And these are mostly people who need to do a presentation in English, either have a conference call or they're going to the United States on business, or sometimes it's vacation, but I'm charging $80 an hour for this. And so I'm noticing the people who can afford this are more business oriented. And I have 12 years of experience of doing this.
Yep.
And I have a degree in economics, so it aligns with what I've studied. The question I have with that is,
The best way to, I don't know if you do corporate training or not, but I feel like for that, off the top of my head, literally, I feel like the low-hanging fruit would be to do corporate training, meaning, there's all these people in, like, I talked to this company that does training for Pepsi, like PepsiCo, and there's all these like corporate headquarters down in South America and Mexico and Spanish-speaking countries, where those companies have executives there, but those executives have to speak English because they have to talk to people.
Yeah, I've done this before for Johnson & Johnson. They hired a company to they hired Brazilians locally to work in their pharmaceutical department in Brazil near Sao Paulo. And I had 5 employees who needed to pass a TOEIC exam, which is like the professional side of proving English.
Yeah.
And this company required their employees to have a standard and to also have an increase. They had to improve their scores, I think, by 20%. And then if they did that, they received an increase. And I did that for 2 years.
Yeah,
online. It was great.
I know a lot of people who do corporate training, like whether it's English or like leadership training or wellness training or all different kinds, like communication training. So that's where the money is. Like when I first worked with Mel Robbins, this is before she had all of the podcasts and all of that. Like 90% of her income was from speaking gigs, and most of those speaking gigs were speaking at corporations. Like she'll go speak to the sales team at Chase, or you know what I mean. So that's actually like because every one of those companies have a set budget every year, and then
Oh,
if they don't
yeah.
use it, they lose it. So there are these like HR departments and the training departments. They're constantly on the lookout for training. So if you can put together like a training program, like let's say here's a 5-week training program to executive English training program or something like that, and you just reach out to all those HR departments of those big corporations, or
Mhm.
there are also middleman companies, meaning training companies that work with those HR departments. You should definitely talk to Ellie about that because Ellie's husband, Ellie, who's our other community member, her
Yeah.
husband does this in Turkish for
Yeah.
Turkey. So there might be companies in Turkey that needs English training too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I think one thing that I like and I hate is that I've focused so much on Brazil and Brazilian culture and how work is done there that I am forgetting how things are done.
Other languages.
Right. Like, or
Yeah.
how things are done here in the US. You're right. So in Brazil, the person's responsible for their own development in the corporate level. Some companies pay for it that are international, but it's kind of like you need to prove that you're like willing to learn the English to get into this position, whereas the
I see
company
what you
doesn't
mean.
pay for it. Some companies, so Herring, which is a clothing company, they do have a budget, but it was really hard to close a contract with them. And they finally, like, I was giving classes to the director privately that he would pay, but for whatever reason, the company denied the contract that we created. It didn't meet their standards within Brazil because it was deemed not worth the money
Yeah.
in Brazil.
Well, I think this will mainly work for like international companies that are worldwide because
Mhm.
like because the reason why it works for Pepsi is because there's Pepsi South America, North America, where these people actually have to communicate with people up here.
Yeah.
So in English, and so
Yeah.
it makes sense for them.
Yeah. I've had 2 other business contracts that were very successful. One with the mailing system within Brazil, and they have a very high budget, but it's limited to 2 years. So it's like when the person just gets good enough to start communicating, and they want to keep on going, they've used their like balance with the company, and they don't want to continue with private lessons because like I can charge
those
more.
are not gonna. What you need to
Yeah.
do is those contracts are usually like once you get in once, like it keeps happening over and over and over. And so
Yeah.
actually there's probably like government offices, like maybe the immigration office or like USCIS or whatever. Because I know I have a client who works with FEMA, who works with Department of Justice, like all those like government offices. They also hire people for training, like wellness training and
Right.
stuff like that.
Right.
So once you get in once, like it's almost
yeah.
like you can get a contract every year.
Yes. That's I started so it's really cool actually going through the immigration process of coming to the United States because my husband is immigrating here. So it's really funny because they're mostly Spanish speaking people that work at these locations, and I show up with like, you're American, why are you here? kind of deal. And then
Like,
they see
what?
my husband and my kids, and we're speaking in Portuguese, and they're like, oh, okay, we get it. But I've been to so far 2 agencies here in Annapolis. Everything for my area is in Annapolis, Maryland. And they're saying, you need to volunteer. We need people like you. And I'm like, yeah, but volunteering and getting paid are 2 different things. So it looks like a lot of these organizations are like in the government, they're looking for volunteers. And for whatever reason, like I need to step it up to the corporate level where people are
Oh yeah,
invested.
no, this is a B2B game. Like
Yeah.
like people come to me and like they want to be a public speaker or something like that. I'm like, that's a B2B game, right? Like when most of my clients that gets paid, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year speaking, like the reason why is because these companies, it's not because they're famous. It's because these companies hire them, right?
Right.
Like, a good example is like, Mark Randolph, I think he's like one of the highest paid speaker in the world, but it's not like famous. Like, it's not like he has, you know what I mean? And even Mel Robbins, she was doing all those before she became famous. These companies don't, you're selling the decision maker of those companies. You're not selling the mass market. You know what I mean?
No, the mass market.
There's a difference between these like these public conferences that people pay ticket for, like, like where like Gary Vee speaks. That's a different than what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is like, like Chase Manhattan Bank hires somebody to train their sales team, or like or HSBC hires people to train their customer service team. Like, that's what I'm talking about. And in order to get in there, you have to break through the HR department, because HR departments are the ones that have that has the budget for these.
Correct. Do you think it would be enough for me on my own to do this?
I mean, for me, the way I look at it, it's the lowest hanging fruit. All my clients that are trying to build a personal brand, they're already doing this. And then now they're trying to build an audience, right? Because if you have your own audience, it becomes it's a whole nother level of game, right? But most of the people who do that are the ones who don't have an audience, but they're knowledgeable in whatever their area of expertise, so that they can do that, right? So you would have to do some B2B. Every B2B business is the same. It's a sales relationship game. It's so you need to go reach out to these people, build relationships with them, like HR directors, like like head of HR managers, like build relationships with them, people who do hire these people, or reach out to training companies. There are middlemen training companies or speaking bureaus that works directly with those companies, so that they're their clients. So if you work with them, they already know about those contracts. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I know somebody who's very well connected to a company called SHRM, SHRM. I think it's it's like
so
HR. It's like the big the big thing for the HR. So I definitely have it.
I think it's the most lucrative.
Yeah.
In terms of teaching.
Yeah. Okay. I like that idea. All right. Well, that's an idea.
That should be your baseline. Like, this should be your baseline, so you have a set amount of revenue guaranteed coming in, and then everything else you do is your side hustle. It's the one that, because when you're going out and selling yourself, like when you're trying to build your own community and like, those are much more riskier, right? Because you don't have a guaranteed set income for those, right? Like, some launches you might do well, some launches not as well. Some months you have clients, some months you don't have clients, so that's a very roller coaster ride, right? But when you have these contracts with these companies, usually they're like pretty consistent. So I think that's the low hanging fruit that you should go for first.
Yeah, I think it's because my lack of experience with that here in the US, it's looking a lot bigger and a lot harder than what you're saying it is. Like, I feel like I need some sort of credentials, some sort of
No, I don't think so.
proof. I know.
It's actually the other way around. You need more credential to sell to the public. It's easier to sell to one HR person than to try to sell to 100 customers individually.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay. And I think because of my experience of having a successful school in Brazil, and
all of those count. And then you said you've already done corporate training for other companies, so all of those goes into resume. And it's like getting a job interview or getting hired somewhere. It's less about your resume, and it's more about the relationship.
I guess no, I think that it's something that And also, I really do. I know that you know what you're talking about. So I am listening to this advice. I'm just rethinking of everything that I've
Yeah,
prepared
because
for today.
that's where a lot of my clients that are not Mel Robbins, that are not Jay Shetty, that are not famous,
Mhm.
basically this is what they're struggling with. They have no problem getting these gigs, and that's what
Mm,
pays. That's their bread and butter. They have zero
that's what pays
problem
the
getting those
bills.
gigs. What they want to do
Yeah.
is build a personal brand. So it's not like this is easy and this is hard. It's not the other way. It's the other way around, where this is the one where you can make the money
Yeah.
easily, and
Mhm.
then building a personal brand and selling to the public is the hard part. That's where people they're
Do
coming
you
to me for
know,
help.
do you know what I feel? I feel like it's easy to just create. I mean, because I've done it and I've got a wait list of people waiting for me to open doors to start. So for
Mhm.
me in my mind, I feel like it's easier to just create this program that I'm doing because I have the wait list of people waiting to come in. Like I feel like I've
Yeah,
already
but
prepared it. Hmm.
well, you have to understand, is it like a lot of people are like that, right? And that's why I think
Yeah.
the people, like a lot of like people who are building the personal brand, they come to me and they like they think, and I keep telling them, do not keep selling. Build your brand first. Don't just go ahead and start selling with a small following. And then what they do is they sell the shit out of it, and they do it, and then their
Mhm.
first launch goes great. Their second launch doesn't go as great. And then after like a year and a half, they don't have any more customers because they didn't build their audience. Do you understand? I mean,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, of course, yeah, you can sell it for a certain amount of time, but can you keep adding new audience on? Can you keep selling it year and can you keep growing year after year? Right? That's the
Hmm.
difference.
Right. And I think because of the way that I've marketed myself and my reputation, most of my clients come to me from word of mouth, not from anything that
Oh,
I'm
okay,
really
okay,
doing
yeah,
on
yeah,
Instagram. So every time I open up something, it's like, oh, it's ready. Let's go.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so there's a big demand for the things that I do because in the past I used to have so many options and I've proven how great my course is.
Hmm.
And so whenever it opens up, it's full as soon as it's done.
Okay, yeah,
So
that's
like,
good. Yeah.
yeah, but again, it's very small scale. It's not the income that I need. It's great for living in Brazil,
Hmm.
you know, but which is why I loved this corporate training, um,
Yeah, because to those
reroutes
corporate
for me.
trainers, like literally, you know, like paying $10,000 for a 3 week, 1 hour a week program is like chump change to them, right? Like getting
Yeah.
$120,000, like 4 month, once a week training gig, that's like chump change to
Hmm.
them,
Hmm.
Whereas imagine trying to raise $120,000 from individual customers, like how much work that's gonna be.
Yeah. And I Yeah, exactly. I would have to have a community of millions, you know. And there are some very
Well, you don't need
successful.
millions, but
No,
yeah.
but to yeah, to charge what I was planning on charging, at least,
Like
yeah.
even like if you look at Hadar's community, like
Hmm.
you do realize like her audience keeps growing every year.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
you can't, if you're in that business, you can't stop. You have to keep growing your audience every year, because otherwise, like I see so many people do that where they don't spend the time in creating content and growing their audience. So they have a certain amount of followers, right? But they're not growing their audience. So what happens is they have great launch, and then it goes down, 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 and then 3 years later, now they don't have any more customers because they didn't invest the time in growing their audience.
Right. You
You
need to
know,
have that new.
yeah, you need new audience keep coming in.
What is that? Is that so fun? It's like I teach English, and I'm like, okay, I'm drawing a blank of
Yeah,
what
fresh
this
blood.
is. Fresh blood. Yeah. So what I have right now is that I've been bringing people into my community, into my lessons, and I'm struggling with finding the right time to do it, to meet the demands. So I'm finding this conflict of time where the community that I'm trying to serve, or this audience that I'm trying to serve, is available at night when I'm trying to get dinner and, put the kids to bed. Whereas if I focused on the corporate level, it would be when the kids are at school, correct?
Yeah.
And that it makes complete sense because then the audience shifts. Okay. I mean, I'm so this is another thing. I'm learning how to say.
I also think that growing your own community, and that's a long-term game, right? Like growing your community, doing your own launches, and growing that business. That's not a short-term game. I always
No.
tell people that you need a short-term plan and you need a long-term plan because you still need to pay bills. So I feel like your short-term plan should be either if you can get a shitload of one-on-one coaching students, or get some corporate gigs like this, right? That's why like most people start out as in freelance and service-based business, and then eventually they want to build a product. Like most people start out as a coach, and then eventually they want to build a course. Because in order for you to sell a course, in order for you to sell a community membership or something like that, you need scale. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it takes time, and it's just that's why it's more of a long-term investment. Whereas in one-on-one and corporate training, those kind of stuff are more immediate revenue.
Right.
And there are people out there that does that for you, that that finds those gigs for you,
corporate jobs for you. Yeah. Oh, I know. Yeah, like headhunters and Okay. Well, I feel like what I've prepared has
but you
become
can still ask me
obsolete.
about that.
I mean, yeah, sure. It'll definitely help people who are in
because
the other
that's what you
situation.
need to build a long term. Because
Right.
the problem with the corporate training thing is that the reason why those clients come to me is because they're sick of corporate training. Like corporate training is basically, it's almost like a 9-to-5 job. It's not as fulfilling because here's the thing, right? If I'm teaching storytelling, let's say I'm teaching storytelling to my community who paid me directly to come. Like they're like in it. They're like, oh, I want to learn. I want to learn from you, son, right? Because they're paying for it, right? But if I'm teaching storytelling because this agency or this company, their HR department paid for it, and like now it's these employees that are like, I have to sit through this shit, and then none of them really care. So it's like it's not going to be as fulfilling. You know what I mean?
Oh, I
so
know.
That's why they come to me and they're like, oh, son, like I want to build because they're sick of doing those corporate training, but it's what pays the bills.
Yeah. I think the reason that I started teaching English was because I saw how it helped my husband's life. Like here, like when I met him, he didn't speak very well, and it was a huge improvement that I saw when we were together. We were together here in the United States for 4 years before we moved to Brazil, and huge improvement. Like he understood how his job was working better. He could, get better jobs here within the United States. So I have that passion for helping people from that experience. And then also when we got to Brazil, he was struggling to find a job. And he interviewed with an international company that was looking for an English speaker. And he had this 2-page resume, and small on the very bottom of the second page, fluent in English. And the boss was like, oh, hey, like, why are you fluent? And he's like, oh, my wife's American. And he's like, oh, yeah, English. And the same day they had 2 Englishmen from England there visiting the company, like crazy coincidence. And the boss was like, hey, come with me. And they had a translator that they hired from Sao Paulo to come, who was doing a horrible job. Like, they spent a lot of money on this translator. And Eduardo got in there and was talking to these people, and the boss was just blown away. This was on a Friday, and the boss said, come back on Monday, you're hired. And he was like, whoa, what? And he was with the company for 12 years. you know? It was such a great experience for him. And if he didn't have that English, you know, like what job? I mean, they paid for him to go to school. Like they took care of him so well only because of his English. And so I've helped so many other people. I've probably helped more than 1,000, maybe 1,500 people teaching English over the course of my time in Brazil. And I have so many of those stories. And I think that's the passion that I have for teaching. Just like what you're saying, like, yeah, I could do corporate stuff and yeah, I'll make money, but where's the fun? You know,
Yeah.
like
And also, would it be the same if you were teaching people that are living here? Because think about it, right? Let's say somebody just moved here from Spain, or somebody just moved here from China, right? And there's some rich person who just rich grad student who came from China with rich parents who are going to school here but need help with English. Like, are you going to feel just as fulfillment like teaching those people? Because do you understand what I mean? Versus somebody that has a bigger impact in living in Brazil because they, I don't know, maybe, I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, there are different types of people that need to learn English within the United States, but I really do want to, like, I want to focus online because of that flexibility of being able to stay home if like a kid gets sick or school gets canceled or something. Like right now we're in summer vacation and we've got 2.5 months of, you know.
Well, there are those websites where you know, like you can do tutoring. Like
they pay like nothing though. They pay like $10, $20 an hour.
It depends on, like the one I'm thinking of is you set your own pricing, because like there are websites out there where people who tutor, and there's like, I'll tutor you opera singing, or I'll tutor you how to play violin or English or something like that. And depending on the level, they charge you what they want.
Yeah.
It's like a gig based.
Yeah.
But the reason why I bring that up, because you're in Maryland, so you might really not know it, but I used to live in New York and I also lived in LA. So in those cities, there are literally tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands people who moved there, who's not a native English speaker, but they live there and they need to work there. So they need to learn how to speak English. You know how many language schools there are in New York and LA? Like, so, I mean, there's plenty of demand there for the people, you know.
Yeah, I have some friends up in New York that are teaching, and they're like saying the same thing, like, come up here, we need people. And in the different regions, they do pay better. And New York is definitely one of them. I know that Maryland has a higher cost of living. And so also, like working at the university here, you do receive more money. But I don't want to work for university at this moment. I'm kind of being pushed by my family to get a job with benefits. And I'm just like, I don't know.
I think you're going to have to make a decision for yourself. Like, I would not recommend somebody to build their personal brand and start advertising themselves and getting students like that, unless that's their end goal. Like, if your end goal is not to have us, because the amount of investment and time and, you know, money and just everything that has to go into building a personal brand is so great that if that's not your end goal, it's a waste of time. If you're just looking for temporary revenue or something like that, income, it's better to go get a job or go work, you know, go do corporate gigs like that, like I talked about. But literally, if you want to build a personal brand and have that to be your permanent job in the long run, I would say you have to really set aside 2 or 3 years of investing time and money into it. You know what I mean? Otherwise, it's like I said, it's gonna book and it's gonna burn and crash.
No, you're absolutely right. And
you know that saying. You know that saying, like, you can shear a sheep many times and you can only skin it once. Like, what I see a lot of coaches and course creators do out there, like 90% of them, what I see them do is they're all skinning the sheep. Like, they don't understand that. Like, you're killing your business in the long run. Yeah, maybe you'll make money for a couple of years. You know how it's the reason why you see so many of these people pop up and then after like 5 years they kind of disappear.
Yeah, they do. No, you're absolutely right. It happens. And I was really privileged to meet Hadara and meet a lot of people, English teachers in her program that she had for teachers, and shared these struggles.
Mhm.
And there was a woman who got into corporate teaching, and she's like, I'm never going back to 101 because this is security. Like,
Yeah.
I can do what I can do. And she was based out in I think London, but it was so great
Yeah,
hearing her accomplishments.
building a brand in the long term is such a stressful thing that I don't think I don't, that's why I don't like this message of like, oh, passive income, like, oh, anybody can do
Oh,
it. Just sort like the reason why I don't like that message is, yeah, you can do that for a couple of years, but then you're, and like they don't understand how stressful it is to actually keep making content, keep putting out content, keep building your
yeah.
brand, keeping your like making sure you put out a good product, keeping your reputation afloat, so people, these haters don't talk shit about you. Like it's not easy work, and unless you're willing to invest that stress for the long run, like I don't think people should do it. If they want a cushy life, go get a corporate gig. you know
No, I definitely see my value. I have so many friends who teach English that I help as well. And when I stepped back from what I was doing, I used to be part of a TESOL program, which was a community for teachers in Brazil. And I stepped away from that to focus more on my children. And when I had teachers working for me and then it didn't work out and I was working on my own, I had to step away from these volunteer positions. And so those volunteer positions are very similar to this corporate position that I would be in because it was volunteer,
yeah,
but it's the same idea, but you're putting yourself to receive money and not just give to
yeah,
the community of teachers.
yeah.
You target yourself to HR, which I have experience doing, and I feel comfortable doing that. One of the interesting things is that I kind of treat everybody the same. And so I know some people get intimidated when speaking to people in higher positions. And I'm just like, we're all people, like we can have this conversation and talk to these people. But I do have this mindset of being available at a lower cost, like, and that's because of upbringing, like the opportunities that I was given was at a lower level. And so I have
Which is
this.
fine if you have the scale. You can provide it at a lower price. You're just gonna need a lot more students.
Right. But I need to target it higher. You said something like a 5-week course at 10,000, as long as it's well organized
Oh, if
and
you're selling to corporate, yeah. I mean,
corporate. Right.
$10,000 to corporate is literally, to them, is like pocket change.
Yeah.
Like you're actually talking more like $50,000 to $100,000 when you talk to corporate, right? Maybe even more.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. This is
I
going to
know
be
Mel
fun.
Robbins used to get paid like $100,000 to $150,000 for 1 hour speaking engagement when
The dream,
from
right?
these corporations. Yeah. So I mean, like, these people have money. Like the
Yeah.
companies have money, right? So it's
Mhm.
literally the easiest to sell to. Like I used to work with an agency that would spend $1 million doing an entire campaign for pharmaceutical ad launch, and they don't get FDA approved, and they would literally just throw. The pharmaceutical companies are willing to pay these agencies $1 million just in case the FDA gets approved. They have it all ready to go, and then if they don't get FDA approved, I'm like, okay, throw it away. That's fine. Like, you know what I mean? That's their mentality. So you have no idea how many websites I built for these these corporate brands where it's just never launched, and they were fine wasting $100,000, $200,000 just to test it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they look at the long run. And I think
Yeah,
they get a lot of, they have different
they have money to
ways.
spend. They have money
Right.
to play around, right? And it's the reason why they're more successful, because you need to play more hands in order to win, right? Whereas in small business are the ones that are like counting every single dollar, and that's why they can't play as many hands. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. Which is why I was thinking when I needed to get to the corporate level, I needed a team. But I think if
No,
I
it's the
target,
other way around.
right, when I
You need a
target,
team if you do it yourself.
mhm.
If you work with corporate, you don't need a team.
No, because they do the
Yeah,
marketing for me. They
yeah.
just have to go in there and show up. Yeah, it feels like a no-brainer. The advice you give, son, it's like just do this. You're going to be
Well,
successful here.
that's for the short term, right? Because
Right, right.
but then in the long term, if you want to build a business,
Hmm.
if you want to build a brand, you have to. The only way is you got to keep putting out content out there.
I had an idea as well. My university had UMBC. It's a great university, a lot of international students, and an idea that I was playing around with was also getting into that network of helping. Do you know, do you have experience with this? I mean, the same idea of corporate level going in, but working with a budget of a university and being on, like, I think they have like a diversity team of helping students that come in. And I used to volunteer when I was a student there, and I met great people. In your experience, is this connected? Like, is
I mean, to
this
me, university is another corporate,
right? That's what I'm thinking too.
because like Columbia University was one of my clients. Well,
Right.
Columbia University, I guess,
Hmm.
because Columbia University owns Columbia University Medical Center, and
Hmm.
so and they're like they spend money just like any other company. They're a business. So
Right.
to me, there's no difference between universities and a company.
Exactly. Yeah. And I have connections and being alumni from there.
Mhm.
I feel like it's like the easy in for my level.
Mhm.
I already have the connection with the TESOL program there, teaching English as a second language. I know the director, we've been in contact the whole time that I've been
I
in
mean,
Brazil.
I don't
And
think it's going to be as hard as you think. Like this, whenever I talk to people about like these kind of selling to corporate and things like that, I think a lot of people get intimidated, and then I find out that, like, for example, uh, somebody's like, oh, how do I get these corporate gigs, blah blah blah, and I'm like, what are you doing to get them? And then he's like, oh yeah, I talked to this person, I talked to this person. I'm like, you know what I was doing when I was trying to get corporate jobs? Like, I was literally contacting 50 people per day. You know how many people that is in a month? That's literally 1,000 people in a month. Like, if you contact 1,000 people in a month, you're definitely gonna get a gig out of that. Like, it's just a numbers game. Like, it's people get
yeah.
so afraid of, like, you know, like maybe it's because they're so afraid of rejection that they don't wanna. Because if you reach out to 1,000 people, it
Mhm.
means 999 rejections.
I think
You
it's,
understand what I mean?
yeah, the rejection part isn't my problem. I think the problem is the perfectionism of wanting to create something worthy of their time, you know. So I
They don't
feel
give a
like,
shit.
and I know this because of the experience that the
You think that person
experiences.
that's working at the HR department who don't care about English, this person is a fluent English speaker already. Okay. They don't really care about this. And not to mention, this person is also managing training for their tech department, their leadership team, not just their English, their customer service team, all these different things. You think that person's sitting there going like, oh, yeah, you got to make sure that you provide this. No, they just want the one that's going to make them look good on paper. You know what I mean? Like the person, that's the thing about corporate. The person that you're dealing with is never the end user. So if I'm building on a website for American Red Cross, I'm working with the marketing director there, who basically is a 28-year-old, person that's been working for marketing for 6 years with some masters in marketing, who got a job at American Red Cross, who's a 9 to 5 employee, who just want to get their paycheck, who's coming in and just they don't want to get fired. you think they give a shit about the website that I'm actually making? No, that's how corporate works. And that's actually the reason why a lot of people don't want to work in corporate, right? Because they're like, but the thing is, it's also the reason why it's the most lucrative.
Yeah, because that's another thing is, I want to, I mean, I think a lot of people, and Gigi, I think she's talked about this, where she wants to do something that like makes a difference, you know?
Mhm.
And so I think that setting myself to be in corporate, but then having like a limit. There was a woman named Steph who was helping with different organizations, and I got to listen to her speak. And I can't remember exactly who she is. She does something in fashion, and she's famous. I should know her better. But she said that she always puts herself in a position to be in there for 2 years, and then she moves on to the next project, and then she moves on to the next project. And so I'm wondering, and they're all like feel good projects, you know, like startups or supporting like a designer or like a new magazine or something. And she'll go in and I think she's like a community director of something. And she did that for Clubhouse. And so she got in, helped them organize it. 2-year mark, she was like, okay, I've done my job. I've got this new vision that I want to go in, and I'm so passionate about this. You know, I don't know.
I mean, but are you at a place where you can do that?
No, I don't know how to get that mindset.
Yeah. Well, she had to.
Yeah.
She had to. What I'm assuming is she had to put in the grunt work up front so that she can build a name for herself to do that, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
So what needs to happen, like, it's kind of that whole 80-20 thing that I'm always talking about, right? Like, a lot of people want to make money from the thing they're so passionate about, but that's like, I tell you the same thing. Like, I guarantee, even for her job is not all glamorous, because
definitely
people
not.
think my job is glamorous. Oh, like, look at Son, he's working with like, look at the website he made for Jay Shetty. Oh, that's so fun. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, that's 20% of my job. Do you think that's gonna pay the bills for everyone? No, like 80% of my job is working with American Red Cross to make sure we get that check. And doing this is what allows me to do this fun work. Do you understand what I mean? And so if you keep having this, it's like people have this utopia in their mind that, oh, I'm just gonna, from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep, I'm just gonna do what I love, what I'm passionate about all day, and that day will never come. Because by the time somebody I will talk about this, right? By the time somebody pays you, they're only going to pay you for the thing that you've already done 100 times over and over and over. So if whatever you do, you're excited about, you do it 100 times, you think you're still going to find it exciting. The same thing. Nobody's going to pay you to try something brand new. Do you understand what I mean? So by the time you get paid for something, it's hard. Or you got to take the risk, right? Like, yes, those startup things, that sounds good, but most of the people that, like, the first 5 employees at, first 20 employees at Google or Uber, like, they're taking a huge risk, because I gotta work at Uber not knowing that if Uber is going to be huge or not. For every Uber, there's 999 companies that fail. Right. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, I know a lot about studying economics. We study this risk management. Yeah, like venture capitalism.
Risk versus reward. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just feel like this whole entrepreneur, influencer, motivational speaker world are completely brainwashing people right now. Like, oh, just follow your passion, do what you love, you never work a day in your life. Or like this whole mindset of like, and like in the email that I'm writing right now that I'm going to send out today, like, one of the things that they say is like, oh, this is why whenever like, okay, this is my theory. Internet was supposed to make us all more knowledgeable, right? Have more understanding of knowledge and things like that. But what we're actually getting is, because people are lazy, instead of getting understanding of knowledge, we're getting misunderstanding of knowledge. So they go on and say, okay, like perfectionism is bad, because perfectionism is the, what did they say, enemy of progress, right? Or paralysis, analysis paralysis, and all of that, right? they talk about that. So people are like, oh yeah, perfectionism is bad, right? But the thing is, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna even I say that, right? Like start messy and all of that, right? But if you're Steve Jobs, right? And what made him successful in building Apple is his perfectionism. So imagine Steve Jobs were 20 years old and listening to all these motivational speakers. We're like, oh, perfection is bad. So he started making everything messy. Do you think Apple would still be Apple? No, right? So that's kind of what people don't understand, that it's like we got to take all of this advice with a grain of salt. We can't just be like, just because something, and I think that's why like people are so hung up on this, like, oh, I don't like my job. I'm not passionate about my job. So I gotta go find something I'm passionate about. And if you're gonna spend the rest of your life looking for a passion, because there's no such thing. It's the gold holy grail.
Yeah. No, I know that whatever I do, I'm very passionate about it. I remember when, I was doing AP, like accounts payable work at my first job after graduating. Like I loved it. And people are like basically you have a stack of papers and you put it in the system and make sure everything gets paid on time. Easiest
I
job.
feel like that's how everyone used to be back then. Like
Yeah.
20 years ago, our parents' generation,
Yeah.
like everybody did boring jobs and they loved it, right? Because
Yeah.
they're proud of their work. They had pride in their work, right? So if somebody's like building a fence, they'll build a great fence because they're pride in the thing they created, right? If somebody mows the lawn or whatever it is, landscaping, painters, where they got the passion is from the pride of doing a great job.
Right.
Not like, oh, I have to be doing a podcast, or I have to be doing, I have to design, I have to do, like,
I have to go to my
it's
photo shoots.
like people are so entitled these days, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I know whatever I decide to do, you've said this to me before, about corporate, but today you really explained it. And I know that whatever I decide to do, I'm going to be passionate about it because that's just how I work, very dedicated. And I want maybe to prove myself as well that I can do it. And, and that other thing to like make my parents proud or make my family proud. And now it's transferring onto my kids. And I'm like, okay, make my kids, my husband proud of the work that I do. So I know whatever I do, it's going to be done well. I just need to figure out the basic, like the skeleton, right? And then go forward.
That pride can also come from the fact that, like, for example, when I was working on the American Red Cross project, Spotify, this corporate, like our corporate projects that we were working on was paying the bills so that I can do this fun projects that with all these animations and shit like that. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, once you know the intention, once you know that, okay, these are for the bills and these are for the funds, like here, I'm going all in and doing exactly how I want to do it. Even if I have to argue with the clients that do a little, like, even if it's hard, I'll do it.
Right.
But here, because I know that my goal is to generate cash, like my goal is to make sure that client is going to love it. Right.
Yeah.
And that means sometimes making it uglier. Do you understand what I mean? So now my goal here is not to provide the best website or what I think is the best website, right? So for you, it might be the same thing. Yes, for here, you might not necessarily deliver the best class, but what you're delivering is to that person who's hiring you, the perception of the best class according to that person, right? And I heard before I start separating these two, I was miserable every day because I was arguing with these clients trying to overdo this and when they don't want that, right? So until I heard Jocko Willink, the Navy SEAL guy, talking about this, right? This guy was talking about, one of his podcast guests was talking about how like he'll sit down to read a book and he can't even get past 3 pages. Like he was talking about all these boring tasks that he just has to do, right? And then Jocko was like, and he's like, no, I just can't do that, right? That guy. And it's like, and Jocko tells him, no, you can do it. I've seen you do it. And he goes, when we were in Iraq, and you had to stay on top of that rooftop for 3 days in a row, just watching that street. And for 3 days in a row, all you're doing is watching that street to see if anybody goes in and out of that building. But you know that if you don't do that job correctly, it could mean the lives of all of these people, right? And that's why you sat there and you're dedicated, even though all you were doing was sitting on top of their lift, looking at that door or that street. It was meaningful for you because you knew what the stakes were, right? So Jocko Willing says, a lot of people in the SEALs, they come back and they can't adjust to society because what ends up happening is they're like, oh, I was saving all these lives, right? I was flying this airplane, I was flying this helicopters, and now I'm back and I'm just making sandwiches at the deli. Like that's why they go crazy, right? But what he says is like, you know what? It does matter. You might think those things, but might not matter. But it does matter if you don't get. Like, for example, you might think that how going to the DMV, wait in line and get your license renewed, it doesn't matter. But it doesn't matter. It does matter because if you don't do that, you're going to get your license suspended and you can't drive to work and pay for your family and, put food on the table. And so it does matter. So that pride can come even from the place that I have pride in doing this work because it puts food on the table for my kids. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. A guy who I used to know back in Brazil, who was also a school owner, he explained to me how we make it's like sustainable. He described it as a triangle, and the students that we love teaching are up here at the top. They're the students that have been with you for 10 years, and it's just such a pleasure teaching them because they're super dedicated, show up every class, do the homework, and their English shows. Yeah. But all of our income comes from the bottom triangle. It's like all the new students come in that they'll spend 2 weeks and they're like, oh, this is horrible. And you keep calling them, say, hey, come to class. Like all of your work is down here at the bottom, but that's what's sustaining your school. Yeah, and then as the progression goes up, like more time.
That's so true.
Yeah, you get to your favorites. Like we hate to say that we have favorite students, but they're up here.
Let me ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
What part of what I said reminded you of that?
Just the 80-20, how like you have to do all of this down here, and that's what I'm thinking. Like I have this here, I have my, which the other thing is that I'm also
but it came to you immediately as soon as I said the 80-20?
Yeah. So it's like, what are you thinking? Why?
Because what you did was you just perfectly connected the dots.
Yeah.
Like, how I always talk about connecting the dots, and people are trying to understand, they're forcing themselves to connecting the dots. And I always say, like, connecting the dots you don't force by connecting the dots, it just comes to you. Like when you watch this and you hear this, you're like, oh, that reminds me of this, right? And that's exactly what you just did. And it was like such a brilliant example of connecting the dots. Like I'm like, Tabitha, like
it's because I told myself no dad jokes today, like just stay serious.
But it's something that you I guess it's because something that you knew for a long time that this is where the fun is, but this is where the money comes in, right?
Yeah.
So as soon as I said that, you were like, oh, that's very similar to like you connected the dots right away. That was amazing.
Yeah, and I'm also connecting it to my passion.
See? You just made me say I never thought of it that way, because as soon as you were saying that, I was like, oh, you're right, because the members that I love the most are our small group leaders, the ones that are showing up every week. But that's only 10% of our community. Like where we make the money is like the people who don't show up.
Yeah. But so the other thing that I wanted to say is that so remember I told you I try my best to treat people the same. And the people that are coming in, I treat them just as well as my favorites. Because if they come in as like the moneymaker, like the ones that I have to give class to, and like, oh, another basics class, which unfortunately a lot of teachers treat their beginner students so horribly and they like teach the verb be, like that's all they do.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no passion in it. And when you join a school, or if you join a university and you're given these beginner classes, it's usually done by the worst teachers because nobody wants to teach these beginners. And I love teaching beginners, which is why I kind of want to do this club, the speaking club. And I had a class Monday. These two guys, one's a pilot and one's like a designer, like an internet something. I should know this better, but it was the funnest class ever. It was just the two of us, like, and we had so much fun doing it. And they left and they were like, how can I have more? I'm like, well, what I have set up is you just have class on Mondays, you guys study later. And the pilot, he was like, no, book me. He was like, how much do you charge? You know, because he has this need that he wants to, you know, teach. So I'm going to be setting up some private lessons for him. But my real passion, like I really want to create these beginners groups and just help these people. But I know that I need to
wonder
make
if
the
that's
money,
the thing, you know, the reason why you made me say I never thought of it that way when you said that, when you connected those dots, is like, now I'm thinking maybe that's one of those 80-20 rules, or like those, you know, those prices law, those kind of things where it's just the law of nature. Meaning, I wonder if that's just how everything is, right? Like, because I said 80% of your money is going to come from, you know, like the, you know, those things that you're not enjoying, right? Like you have to do that in order to, and maybe that's just how it's in school. Like in every school, like a Night Owl Nation, right? The ones that we're really helping are not the ones that are necessarily bringing all the revenue. It's the ones that we're not really able to help as well, like fully, like get them at that level. That's where majority of the revenue comes in, right? Because that's the mass. And maybe that's okay. Maybe because, you know, that's how it is in gyms, right? You know, like only 10% of the people actually use the gym, but 90% of the people who never go to the gym are the ones paying for it, right?
Yeah.
And it's how it works in insurance, right? Like 90% of people who pay insurance never actually claim anything, but the 10% of people who gets into a car accident or something like that are the ones that benefits from the net. So I'm starting to think maybe that's one of those law of nature that I can't break, because you know how we're constantly at Night Owl Nation thinking about how do we get these 80% of the people like, but maybe that day will never come because it's just one of those things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, I know. And I know
maybe I just have to accept it.
I know. One of the things that always makes me laugh is I say this idea and you're like, I don't know. And I'll like keep on like saying it because I directly connect what you're doing because it's the practice, which is the same as the English. Like we need to just practice it, you know? And you also feel that there's no book, like there's nothing that you can read and just do it, just like a course book. Like I can't just hand a person a course book and they'll learn it. They need to have that guidance and that passion, and that practice. And so a lot of the things that you're wanting to do, 24 hours, it's in my head. Like, how can I also improve my students and their experience? So it's directly connected. And that passion, you know, that passion of helping the beginner and then helping them succeed to the top.
But there will always be new beginners. There
always.
I just feel like there's always going to be that 80%, no matter what. And I think it's one of those like law of nature. Like, you know how they say, you know, you ever heard of the Price law, where a square root of the number of people do half the work, meaning if you have 4 people, 2 people do half the work. But if you have like 100 people, 10 people do half the work.
Yeah.
Do you know, like that's the Price's law. And that's kind of like you can try to fix it, but you just can't, because maybe it's tied to human nature or something, or some sort of, you know, physical nature.
And also think about the people who leave English courses. They're satisfied with their level. They've met their goal.
And they're fine. Yeah.
And the same with
maybe 80% of people are satisfied with this. Only 20% of maybe
Or
just
it's
20% of humans want maximum efficiency, like maximum output, right? For example, maybe 20% of people who pay for Netflix like literally watches every movie, like every day they watch a movie, whereas 80% of the people literally just watch one show and that's good enough for them. Or, you know what I mean?
Oh my God. So I'm in a group of the 20%. They have an Excel sheet of like they're like, we need to create our own Rotten Tomatoes. And
Yeah.
I'm like, why am I'm like down here because I don't watch TV as much, but I need to know what's going on because it's culture, and I love that group. But there's such fanatics,
Yeah.
like our storytellers and our,
Yeah.
people who are so passionate about English. They're up here
Yeah, so
creating.
there's that's why there's probably a curve like that where there's the fanatics and then it just drops off like that. And so
Yeah.
there's no point trying to build a business where 100% of people are fanatics. That'll never happen. You always have that 10 to 20% of fanatics, and the rest of the 80 90% are just going to be lukewarm, and we have to be okay with that. But that doesn't change the fact that the 80 to 90% of lukewarm people are actually paying the bills. The fanatics are getting the benefits from, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I also do think it's a time as well. So like the triangle that this person, his name is Edson, was telling me about was that the first year it's this amount of people. The second year it's a little bit more. The third year it's less. The
Yeah, the
fourth year
fanatics are the ones that are gonna last all the way up to fourth year.
Yeah. So if we connect it to Night Owl, first quarter, it's not 80% really of this triangle. Maybe it's 60% or 40%,
Because the
So
new people are coming in. Yeah.
is it, these
But
new
what I'm saying is, it doesn't matter as we keep growing.
Yeah.
That 80% is also gonna grow.
No, yeah.
It doesn't change
will.
because what I'm thinking in my head is like, no, everyone who pays has to get the most out of it, right?
It's because you're
But
so generous.
the truth of the matter is, most people don't care.
No.
So, like most people, like for example, if I was running a gym and somebody's, let's say, paying $20 a month and they never come to the gym, like I would feel terrible. Like I'm like, no. But then most people don't care. They don't mind paying the $20 a month and not going to the gym because they're telling themselves, oh, I'll start going next month. And they don't go, I'll start going next month. Like, you know what I mean?
It's just the satisfaction of having that little Planet Fitness key ring on there. The $20 is worth that feel good.
or most people don't care that they're paying $20 a month for HBO and all they're watching is Game of Thrones. They don't watch anything else. Like they're fine with that.
I'm paying for HBO and I haven't turned it on in months.
Yeah, exactly. And most people don't care.
I don't care.
And to me, that just seems so inefficient, right? Like meaning, really, 80% of HBO's revenue comes from people who don't even watch it. Like that seems like such an inefficient business, but maybe that's
I should just say. And I said it like I should know I should cancel my plan and then go back when Game of Thrones comes back on. But I just, just that
maybe that just can't be changed. Like, you know what?
But it's the insurance of it too, right? So you said most people don't use insurance. Maybe because summer's here. Technically, like I'll have more nights, to have like a date night with my husband, and maybe we'll turn on HBO and it'll be there for us to watch that movie.
Yeah. And that's good enough for you. Like
that one
the fact
movie,
that, yeah,
definitely that one date night watching that movie that showed up.
Or when this one, like for example, like people who watch Netflix, just Squid Games is enough for them. Like even if they don't watch anything else.
Yeah, is Squid Game still number one of like ever? Like the most streamed?
Probably not.
They've broke a lot of records. But yeah, exactly. Like, is it worth it?
Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking now. Maybe you see, so as from this conversation, like what I'm walking away with is that I can make a carousel about that, right? Like like 80% of your revenue is going to come from people who's not even using your product or service, and that's okay and that's fine. And then I can give you an example, like how many people do you think that pay for a gym go to the gym? How many people that pay for HBO or Netflix to actually pay? Like, blah, blah, blah. How many people that go to the school? Like, all in all different areas. And then that's gonna be one of those carousels at the end. People go like, so don't expect all of your students or all of your customers to, so, it's okay. Like, don't expect that everybody's gonna want all those features. It's okay. If well, somehow I'm gonna come up with the carousel that talks about what we just talked about in a shorter way.
Yeah.
And then at the end, people are gonna be like, I never thought of it that way, right? And then people come and ask me, son, how did you get that idea? Like, how do you come up with these? I never thought of it. Like, this is how.
Yeah,
you just saw it in action.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think that's what a lot of our creators in Night Owl are getting out of this. Like these conversations and these deep connections. Like one of my favorite things is this podcast.
Oh, really?
Absolutely. Yeah, because we have these deeper conversations where we can just sit and talk and we're not worried about time so much, and we can explore these ideas. Whereas like at Sunday service, it's like, okay, we've got this coming up next.
That's why I don't like when sometimes I go on these podcasts, which is like 30 minutes long. And it's like, okay, son, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? Blah, 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 or this IG live that I've done. I don't like this because I feel like it takes at least 30 minutes just for you to get warmed up to a point where conversation starts to get interesting. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. 90-minute max or 90-minute minimum to have a breakthrough with Sun. But you've shared that too. You've said that when you get a new client and you're trying to figure out how their sales page is really going to benefit from them, I think you shared like you were sitting with them for like 3 or 4 hours. Like, okay, what is your need? Or what is your audience's need? What is their pain points? What is this? What is that?
Yeah.
And like they keep going over and going over. And then finally they share that moment that's like that one customer and that one
it just
solution.
Clicks.
Yeah. And you said
it's almost
time.
like when it happens, it's like because a lot of people do brand storytelling and all these marketing messages where it feels like you're kind of forcing it, but when those click happens, it's so obvious. It fits so perfectly and it's so obvious that everybody in the room is going to be like, of course, like it's so obvious, right? It has to be like that. Yeah,
absolutely.
Awesome. This conversation kind of went took a different turn, but it was still
no, but it was again like totally beneficial. Like I walked away with so much and different from what I thought I was going to talk about, but then at the same time not, like I still went through and
the story of my life. Every time I go into a meeting, every time I go into an interview or anything like that, you just never know what to expect.
Yeah, no, but I'm completely satisfied.
But still good,
like such a great conversation as always.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for the amazing chat, and also thank you for everything that you do at Night Owl Nation. I mean, Night Owl Nation would not be able to operate without you. So I really appreciate you there.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody, go check out Tabitha. I'll put all the show information in the links.
Thank you so much.
Welcome to America. I wish you all the luck. adjusting back in the homeland.
Oh, I'm having so much fun. I love it here. I'm happy to be back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone. Bye Tabitha. Bye everyone. Cheers.
Bye.